Hello, and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. I'm about to have just a great Friday afternoon because I got Jimmy Akin, second hour. We're going to do weird questions. That's always a fun way to close out the work week. And this hour, our good friend, my good friend, Rose Sweet. Rose, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Cy. I am your good friend. I love you very much.
Yes, and I you communicate that which is the sign of a good friend.
Especially when I'm teasing you and the people behind me don't.
They're encouraging you.
Yeah. Cy, can I say something right away?
Yes, please do, Rose Sweet.
I'm so happy today for two reasons.
I am so happy you're happy. What are your reasons?
Number one is that you had scheduled me today instead of yesterday when I heard that you had to raise $1,000 a minute.
Yeah, it's impossible. You can't raise $1,000 a minute.
How did that go?
I'll tell you what, you can't raise $1,000 a minute unless the Holy Spirit opens the floodgates. And there's been 2 hours in my time here at Catholic Answers during pledge drives where I felt the Holy Spirit take over, and you just felt like I got nothing to do with this. One was an hour a while ago with Tim Staples where the phones went out. And so we figured we wouldn't raise any money. We were one of the best hours we've ever had. Well, that's Jesus. You can't do that.
Right.
And then yesterday, we didn't do anything. We didn't change anything, but the response was overwhelming. And it was like the Lord was saying, okay, you're worried about raising $1,000 a minute. That's not enough for me. And you just leave feeling such gratitude, such incredible gratitude. And that, we did our part. We answered the phones, but we didn't make that happen.
Well, you and Jimmy were really working it, and I was praying for you too. And
well, thank you. Well, that's probably what did it. You were praying for us.
Thank you. I think it's important because we're in such a weird cultural place right now. We really need the good news.
Yeah, we do.
So good
right.
for you. The second thing I'm really happy about.
Yes.
It's almost September, and the annual Catholic Answers Conference is coming up.
Yay, yes. Last weekend of September.
It's my favorite event of the year.
Yeah, people. There's the Rose Sweet fan club comes. That's what you had gathered around you, and it's wonderful to see you there every year.
Well, I love it. You have great speakers, and great activities, beautiful liturgies, confession available all the time, adoration, good fellowship. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're coming again.
I am.
It's just so nice to be with people. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but that pandemic really put a damper on things.
I know. We need the communion of saints. We need to get back together.
I know.
I don't want to wait till heaven for the communion of saints. I want to taste some of it right now.
Right. Yeah. And I'm so glad you're coming. So it's September 24th. It's pretty much the prettiest time of the year here in San Diego.
It's really pretty.
And all that stuff that you just said. Plus, you didn't mention that we do the radio show live there twice, Thursday and Friday afternoon. But
and you will be there, and you'll be signing your copies of your wonderful books.
Yes, I remember last year it had just come out, and I probably signed upwards of 3 or 4 copies. My hand hurt after that.
Yuck.
All right. Usually, we a lot of times we're talking about marriage with you because that's what you do. In large part, you help people with marital questions, annulment questions, all of that kind of things, divorce questions. You also do life coaching for people at rosesweet.com. But today, let's start before marriage with the growing phenomenon of living together as if married without the benefit of marriage. This is everywhere. As a matter of fact, I've heard that about half of the children born in the United States each year now are born out of wedlock because their parents just didn't do it, didn't get married. That hasn't happened. How do you feel about that, Rose?
It's tragic.
Why?
And I know what it is.
What is it?
People are afraid. People are afraid to be locked in, hemmed in, have no escape, be unhappy, carry a cross, be miserable. And the culture really has groomed us the last several decades. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, but particularly in the last few decades, Be all that you can be. Do what you want to do. Achieve your dreams. Don't let anybody stand in your way.
Yeah.
And that has gone over to relationships and especially marriage. I'm
Right.
not happy. I saw a billboard driving in today that said, bored? Call this divorce lawyer. And I'm like,
Oh my Lord!
bored? Bored?
Boredom is cause for divorce now.
Yes.
Man,
If you're
my
not
wife would
happy-
divorce me a long time ago if that was. Yeah, that's awful.
So I do
That's
want to talk
awful.
about cohabitation in this show today. It's an important topic we need to revisit because a lot of people out there, and I know a lot of your listeners, are either in this situation or have children or
Right.
friends in the situation, and they don't know what to say or do. And we're going to cover that toward the end, I think, hopefully.
All right, the number's 888-318-7884. The difficulties and the reasons not to cohabitate today with Rose Sweet, 888-318-7884. If you'd like to get in on that conversation, we'd love to get you in on that conversation. All right, Rose.
Yeah, I want to share a story of a very
okay.
dear friend who, when she was in her 30s, wanted to be married and wanted to have kids and was ready to give herself completely and totally in marriage, but nobody was really coming along asking for her hand in marriage. So she went with a bunch of her Catholic girlfriends who were all in the same Catholic ministries together. They were good Catholic young women. And they went to a bar, and this woman met a nice, handsome, charming man. And she recognized right away that he had a little gold cross on a chain. So she thought, oh, good, Christian, tick that little box off.
Uh-huh.
So she went out with them. They fell in love, and he was kind of hesitant to get married, but she was chomping at the bit.
Mm-hmm.
So they talked about moving in together. Now, she was from a big Catholic family. She knew this was against church teachings, but she had rationalized to herself that all those old celibate men in Rome really didn't understand modern thinking. And if this guy said he loved her, and clearly he wanted to be with her, and he did say that he wanted to get married again someday, because she found out later, much later, that night that they met, he had just left his previous wife.
But she didn't know.
And didn't say anything, and
Uh-huh.
she didn't know. So they move in together. And she feels a little uneasy, but she's also excited, because if he could see what a wonderful wife she could be. She's a good cook. She's sexually available. He had a little child from a previous marriage. She became the most perfect. She could be a stepmother, and she could just take care of everything, and he would love her and just beg to marry her.
Yeah, I see that plan. As on the
Well-
male side of it, that doesn't seem like that plan's going to work for her, but
He didn't beg to marry her, but he felt pressured because he didn't know what else to do, and he totally appreciated that she
Oh.
was there and taking care of everything. So they slid into marriage after cohabitation.
okay.
Now, you might have guessed this friend of mine is me.
Ba ba ba.
So this was over 30 years ago, and I had one foot in my faith in the Catholic Church and the other foot in the culture, like so many people today still do. And we did end up divorced a few years later. And I'll never forget, Cy, when I asked my then husband, why did you even marry me? And here's the thing, I already knew the entire time that he felt like he had no other option. I knew
Oh.
that he married me because it was convenient. So he looked at me and he said, because you look good on my arm, sex was great, and you loved my son.
Wow, thanks.
That cut to the core,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it was the absolute truth that I'd always known. I knew through the entire time that he didn't love me the way I always wanted to be loved and needed to be loved. And I certainly didn't love him the way God designed him to be. We used each other.
Yeah, well, explain your side of the using. You used him because, in what sense,
I
Rose?
didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to be
Yeah.
lonely. I didn't want to be a woman with no children. I didn't want to not fit in. All my girlfriends were married. So it was all about me designing
Yeah.
a life that would make me happy. And he, in a certain sense, this is with God's grace and wisdom and hindsight, he was a chess piece that I put in this picture.
Yeah.
And he made it complete. So it was sinful and it was prideful and my spiritual director, God bless him, pointed out, you were so filled with pride. What, Father? What? Because you thought you deserved to be happy, and you deserved to bend the rules the way that you wanted.
What a great insight.
Right.
Wow.
So pride is everywhere. It's cohabitation is a poor, fearful, prideful, and self-centered effort to get something good.
You know, I think in the modern world, we don't like to use those old-fashioned words like pride, but the word is entitlement that's out there now. You're entitled to all this, and that, I mean, I do think for whatever reason, we are very entitled, and I think even that the way you describe dismissing those celibate men well, that's not the teaching on marriage. It's not the product of some celibate men in Rome. It's the accumulated wisdom of the human race and the teaching of Jesus Christ. But there is a certain entitlement that just wants to be able to dismiss that.
Well, and you know that because you're in this business of understanding and going deeply into our faith. As a 30-year-old woman, I knew Jesus, Mary, and the Ten Commandments, but I didn't know the issues of morality and philosophy and the 2,000 years of wisdom, and I didn't give a rip in a certain sense because I just wanted to be married.
Yeah.
And I know there are still people out there today who are just doing the same thing I did, and my heart breaks for them, and yet I think they may not listen until they come crashing down and have enough pain and then cry out to God and say, Lord, help me. And then that's what happened to me. And he will. He's faithful to that.
Yes, right. Again, the number's 888-318-7884. We're talking about cohabitation. Not a common topic so much anymore. As a matter of fact, it almost seems sometimes like we've surrendered the field there and just we're hoping for the best. But there is the accumulated wisdom of all the generations of humanity behind the idea of the permanence of marriage between a man and a woman. But there is also the fact that Christ elevated marriage, that he took, as a matter of fact, it's the only one of the sacraments that pre-exists, that Christ took something else that had already existed and made it sacramental. So he gives the imprimatur, the divine imprimatur, to what humanity really already knows about marriage. I mean, Jesus is not teaching into a void. There's not a new thing. It's just he gives the divine clarity to exactly what God means by marriage.
Like all good parents, and with divine pushing against that clarity are all the little jumping up and down screaming kids who want their way.
Yeah, right.
We
do.
This is another thing that I'm very aware of in the church. In recent years, we've all been up in arms about those who attempt marriage without an annulment, or who attempt marriage with a same-sex partner. And we know that it is wrong, it hurts, it's sinful, and we're all jumping up and down on those bandwagons. But nobody's really saying, well, yeah, but you're living with your boyfriend, and so what if you're engaged?
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who have same-sex attraction are very angry and upset at the imbalance and the double standard that appears in the church. You guys are on us, but what about Susie and Billy,
right,
who have been living together for 6 months?
Well, one of the interesting things that you have given me in the notes for today is this idea that you're not more likely to have a successful marriage if you cohabitate. You're actually damaging the habits that will be necessary for a successful marriage. So after we take the break, we'll talk about that a little bit. Perfect. We've got a couple folks on the line, and we'll get to those calls. That means 4 lines are open, 888-318-7884, talking about cohabitation with Rose Sweet. We'll be right back to do more of that right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catch Catholic Answers Live anytime at Catholic.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
Wherever you are in the world, you can access the EWTN Global Catholic Network. It's everywhere. You can get EWTN's great Catholic programming on your car radio, at home on your TV, computer, or smart speaker. With EWTN's app, you can take EWTN everywhere on your phone or mobile device. If you want your news in print, turn to EWTN's paper of record, the National Catholic Register. EWTN, the Global Catholic Network.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host, with Rose Sweet. And sometimes we do talk about divorce with Rose. We'll talk about annulments with Rose. We'll talk about attempts at marriage, like plural marriage or gay marriage or that kind of thing. But one of the things that we don't talk enough about, maybe as a church, is the beautiful teaching on marriage as a counterbalance against this cultural habit we have now of just people sliding into the cohabitation and lacking the kind of I suppose seriousness and intentionality that it requires to get married and to make the kinds of decisions that come with marriage. If you want to get in on this conversation, we'd love to have you. If you want to share your experience, that might be very helpful to young people listening. If you have questions about how to talk with family members about this or questions about your own situation, Rose is good at all that. 888-318-7884. Share a little bit more with us, Rose, and then I'll go to the phones and we'll get some calls.
Okay, we're all made for this perfect kind of love, and this is what the church teaches. It's the way Jesus loves his bride. We've talked about this before. I'm borrowing from St. John Paul II's beautiful love and responsibility theology of the body. We want to love where the other person is free of pressure and fear and agendas. They choose us for our own sake. They just adore us, right?
Right.
They want that no pressure, free. We want full love. Don't hold anything back from me. Give me all you got, baby, and I'll give you all I got.
Right.
Forever, till death, right? We want, please be faithful to me. Don't ever expose me to any harm or lead me down any bad path. Just bless me and love me and protect me and take care of me. We all want that, right? And let our love be fruitful. Let whatever may come, whatever blessings and joy come from our union, let's be open to all of that, right? We all want that. Well, here's what cohabitation says. Well, I like part of you. I do love part of you, but I'm not sure if I know all part of you. And I'm a little bit afraid of being trapped, because if it doesn't work out and I'm not happy, I don't want to be stuck with you. And I don't want to put you on my will or my bank account yet, because what if I don't like you again and it doesn't turn out, and I really don't trust you. And you know what? Let's just live together and have sex. I'll be sexually available to you and vice versa. And even though the church it says it's wrong and it puts your soul in danger, you know what? Let's forget about your soul for now. We're happy now, right? I love you. Let's just now, right? Okay? So let's commit sin, and God will bless us if we love each other, right? God is love, right? So, and kids, I'm not ready for kids, so please contracept and maybe take the pill, which is cancer causing and all those other stuff. And if you do get pregnant, I will pay for the abortion. This is not love.
No.
This is horrible using of the other person, and we can't wake up and see it because we're so afraid of being alone and unloved. So afraid. This is why I have compassion, but it also makes me sad and sick at the same time.
888-318-7884, the number. Rose, I know you got more. I'm going to get some folks on the line with you.
Let's do it.
We'll do some calls and then continue our discussion about cohabitation. Maria in Wisconsin, listening on Ave Maria Radio. We're glad you're here, Maria. Go ahead with your question for Rose.
Yeah, my question is this. Growing up, I've been born and growing up as a Catholic, and unfortunately growing up in a very dysfunctional family, even if Catholic, but I fall in the same path. So I married my husband. I never been with a man before. He was the only boyfriend, my only man in my life. Unfortunately, I just realized, he mistreated me. He devalued me all this year. After 30 plus years, now we're in the middle of divorce. Now, my question is this. What should I tell my kids now? I'm wondering if I probably go have it with my boyfriend before. I will know. I will see the red flags that I didn't see because I was married, without cohabitation with him. So that was all like, blindfold,
Yeah.
Maria, I'm really glad you used that word blind because here's what happens when you live with somebody. It's not a trial marriage. In fact, the Catechism of the Catholic Church warns against that. It's a grave offense against the dignity of persons and marriage. But sex, when you're united in sex, and this is the way God designed it, it blinds you to the red flags. I mean, when you get married, when you get married properly, and you're nitpicking your husband or your wife, coming together and making love is supposed to help you not be so nitpicky and be soft and tender toward each other. So sex by its design blinds you and binds you. So this is why statistics show that people who cohabit 60% of them break up. And of the ones who do go on to marriage, 50% of them go on to divorce. So it is not a way to see red flags and run. You get in like a mud puddle and you get stuck. You get bound to each other and you're blind to the red flags and you move forward in hope and fear. And that's where we make our mistakes. So please, Maria, tell your children.
I hope, that I have that he will change. Everything will get better. Yes.
No. What you see is what you get. And I learned that too late in life. But the reason we're afraid to leave is because we're afraid to be alone. We don't know how to be alone, and so many other reasons. But as you were talking, I was thinking this example. Maria, what if you were driving down the street and all your kids are in the car with you, and you start texting, and you're not supposed to, but you do because it's real important. And you go off the side of the road and kind of flip the whole family van. Now, nobody gets horribly hurt, but you did a big bad thing, right? So even though you did it and you were stupid and you were wrong, you want to tell your kids, don't do what I did. Don't text while you're driving. Don't live with your boyfriend or girlfriend before marriage. Take the high path. Take the high road.
Maria, what do you think?
Well, I don't know if she she knows that I did never cohabitate.
You didn't cohabitate,
right?
Okay, yeah,
right.
So I should still tell my kids, though, even though this I know it's very difficult time that we're living now. But
it seemed like this is what I understood, and I'll just check with you, Maria. It seemed like your fear was, okay, now I'm a child of divorce. I divorced. I teach my children not to cohabit, and they're just going to get married and they'll end up divorced. Is that the fear under it, Maria?
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so living together does not increase their chance of escaping divorce. Living together is statistically proven outside the church, in the culture. These studies have proven a much higher rate of misery and heartbreak and divorce for people who live together before marriage.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And God bless you, Maria. Thank you for the call, and thank you for sharing with us.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. This is the thing I think that many people do think, though, is that trial marriage, as the church calls it and you called it, or cohabiting, somehow gives me life experience that'll make me better at marriage. How do you respond to that?
Well, it sounds good on the surface, but that's what we tend to do. We don't think very deeply anymore in our culture. Don't get me on how we don't even teach our kids in the schools to think rationally or deeply anymore. But it sounds good, but test it. When you are in it and it feels good and it feels like marriage and you're having fun because you're in the honeymoon stages and you're having sex and you're doing things together, you're binding yourself, and it is very, very difficult to walk away from that.
Right. Makes all of that much more difficult.
So you're living with somebody for a year and you're just like, everybody, you look like you're married, you feel like you're married, and all of a sudden you find out he has a huge addiction, you're more likely to go, well, maybe with time it'll get better, and some prayer, prayer.
Right.
Instead of going, wait a minute, I'm out of here.
Red flag, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas if you had refrained from the living together, I sometimes think one of the things we don't like to talk about too is that this kind of thing is not the same for women as it is for men, because there is a limit on how old a woman can be when she has children. And so sometimes I think men are just goofing around and they're wasting this woman's time by making her think they're going to have babies together.
Well, let's not go off on that path against men, because I could be there all day, Cy.
Oh, okay,
No. We are equally guilty of
Okay.
using each other.
All right. I'll take your word for it. We will be right back with all the lines full. Lots of folks want to talk about this. I'm glad we do. We have that opportunity. We'll talk about more about cohabitation right after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Can you defend the Church's teaching on the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist? Do you desire a deeper relationship with our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament? Join us September 22nd through 25th for the annual Catholic Answers Conference in San Diego. This year's theme is the Eucharist, I Am With You Always. Featuring all the Catholic Answers speakers and special guest Bishop Thomas Paprocki, use promo code EARLY to save $50 when you register at CatholicAnswersConference.com.
Want to know more about the origins of the Catholic Church? Joe Heschmeyer explores the beginnings of Christianity in The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. Joe digs deep into the words and actions of those who lived right after the apostles to refute anti-Catholic claims of how the faith was lived back then. Order your copy of The Early Church Was the Catholic Church today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Do you have a clean joke to share with the world?
Be with us Monday on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
On most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Trying to save some of you from some trouble. It's a bad habit. I'll tell you that. That's the way I think of it. It's a bad habit our society has gotten into, our culture has gotten into. And sometimes we don't like to look at our bad habits, but a bad habit of being casual about sex outside of marriage, first of all. But maybe that's always been a bad habit among humans. I don't know. I haven't been alive that long. It seems like it, Rose, but I haven't been alive that long.
No, you've been alive a long time.
The habit of neglecting marriage or dismissing marriage or just avoiding marriage, this is a really serious bad habit that we are in. And I know that the Church would like us to go back to better habits in that regard. So if you have questions about cohabiting, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. I'm going to go down to San Antonio, Texas. Stephen, listening on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Stephen, go ahead with your question for Rose Sweet.
Okay, my question is this concerning the cohabitation of couples and marriage and all that. Here's the way I see it. I think the couples that cohabitate, let's say for 5 years, and then they get married and then they get divorced, like you were saying, it damages marriages, cohabitation. But I feel that those same people that cohabitate with each other and they break up would have been the same people that would have gotten married and then they would have gotten divorced. because I feel like it's the couple that makes or breaks a marriage. It's the couple that makes or breaks cohabitation. And here's what I mean. Like, perfect example, Oprah Winfrey and Stedman, they've been together for like 40 years or something like that. And they're cohabitating. They're not married. Oprah doesn't believe in marriage. So, but yet, if they would have gotten married 40 years ago, these are the same couples that would have stayed committed in their marriage. So it's down to the couple. I don't think it's cohabitation that makes or breaks the marriage. I think it's just the couple that makes or breaks the marriage. These same people would have gotten a divorce whether they cohabitated with each other or not.
So I'm just curious, then I'll let Rose answer. What do you make of the fact that there's been a vast increase in both cohabitation and divorce? You don't think that these are related?
I think those people that are cohabitating are going to be the same type of people that if they didn't cohabitate, they just got married. 5 years later, they probably would have broken up and gotten divorced anyways. I don't really think the cohabitation is the issue. I think it's the couples. I think it's the two people in the thing.
Okay, Rose?
Well, okay, let me acknowledge the truth that is in your point, and that is every marriage does ultimately depend on the maturity and the ability to love of the man and the woman. You are absolutely right. It depends on the person. However, that is not the only reason, and that cohabitation has been proven to cause great damage to the psyche of the person and to the relationship. And as a matter of fact, I happen to bring 10 side effects, negative side effects of cohabitation. It's like those ads for medicine on the TV.
Oh, now you're going to give us the negative side effects?
Yeah, and now I'm going to play soft, beautiful music while I'm saying, this could kill you.
Yeah.
Okay, so cohabitation is a counterfeit. It plays at marriage without giving the best goods of marriage, and therefore it sets the couple up to give only what they want or feel free at the time to, and that attitude doesn't change after the wedding. That's a habit. Number two, it uses and deprives and endangers the self and the other. It says, it conveys to you, you're not worth all of me. You are not worth all of me. And that goes deep inside someone's mind, heart, and soul. And all kinds of things develop from that. Number three, it risks a child being born into a really unstable or even dangerous situation, or even being aborted, which, again, forget just the death of the child. That spreads out to everybody involved, including the family. Number four, it disrespects the dignity of persons, of marriage, and of sex. It, in effect, says that marriage isn't that important. Marriage is just the last step where I'll put you on my bank account and on the life insurance policy. And it's self-determining. It's ignoring years and thousands of years of human history and wisdom. Number five, it has a huge failure rate that we talked about. 60% of people who live together break up. And that is pain, misery, lack of trust, depression, even suicide comes from that. So we can't say that it doesn't make that big of a difference. Number six, it increases the risk of divorce. We talked about that by 50%. It binds you and it blinds you. Number seven, and this is a big one to me. And Stephen, to your question, it depends on the person. The number one killer of any relationship, any friendship, any marriage, any business partnership, the number one killer is selfishness, self-protection. And cohabitation is all about selfishness and self-protection. Number eight, now here we can bring our religion in. These were reasonable arguments, reasonable side effects, and now let's bring religion in with reason.
Okay.
It's idolatry. It's saying, I deserve to live my life this way and use my body this way and to be a relationship this way, and I expect God to bless it, or at least maybe ignore it, and I have to have it to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, you put that above God and your love for God and His will for you. That's a form of idolatry against the first commandment. And really, as we know as Catholics, as Christians, all sins flow from that first commandment. To desire and to want and to pursue anything with the fierce intensity that belongs only to God. Number 9, it places the couple in constant temptation to other serious sin, fornication. You know, sex outside marriage says, I want your body, but I don't want your heart and your soul and your mind, and I don't want, or maybe I want all that stuff now, but I don't want it, maybe next month I don't want it. It's a terrible violation of the dignity of human persons, and we're willing to put up with that because we're scared and lonely. And number 10, and this is huge too, and I think this is where we are today, it gives cause to others to justify their sins. Look, if Rose Sweet can live with her boyfriend and have sex outside marriage, and look, she runs a catechism ministry and she goes to church and she and Father are friends, and she's not paying attention to those rules, then maybe I don't have to pay attention to the other church rules. If Rose cannot have to do that and still Father invites her over to his house for dinner, well, why should I follow all the rules?
I'm going to go back to Stephen. I just want to see what
Yeah,
Stephen has to
number
say. I just
10.
want to make sure that I got all 10. But
I know that was long,
Stephen,
but-
no, you gave a cause, Stephen, for a good conversation. What do you make of all that, Stephen?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I'm not advocating for cohabitation, but here's the thing on the statistics, though. You said that, like, the 50% of marriages where they cohabitate end in divorce. But I was just wondering, statistically, people who don't cohabitate and get married, isn't it the same statistic? Like 50% of those also get divorced? Or am I wrong about that? What's the stats on that if you don't cohabitate?
You're more likely to get divorced if you have cohabitated. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that even social scientists would agree on exactly what the difference is. I mean, the things that I read, there are, you know, and in all social science, there's kind of politics about it, so it depends. But I think that there is a general consensus that you're more likely to get divorced if you have cohabitated, but there's not a consensus on exactly what the number is.
Well, and there's a lot of different layers to this, and I know we don't have time to get into that, but this is a great question, Stephen. When you're willing to go into a half relationship or a counterfeit marriage, something happens to you and you're maybe, like I did, you're willing to do it again. Maybe I just needed to try harder. And it distorts the thinking, it distorts the perception of yourself, of the other, of marriage. But people who will rightly hold back and not get blinded by sexual activity and quasi-marriage have a clearer vision most often of what they want and what they're willing to enter into. Some don't. You're right. Some are going to be the idiot with cohabitation or not.
Yeah, right, sure. We've
Of
always
course.
had that.
Right. But it's proven. It changes your mindset. It changes the way you look at things, and it's never good.
And when you say it changes the way you look at things, I'm interested in that thing about scandal that you talked about, because there is a kind of community standard that changes where we don't expect people to stay together. We don't expect people to stick it out through really tough times. And that, to me, then you get into marriage yourself. I don't know if you know this, Rose. Marriage is hard. and so, like, the encouragement to just kind of, I mean, just the general acceptance of the fact that, yeah, people move on from one another, and the failure to encourage people, no, stick at this for life. There's a great reason to stick at it for life. That habit of mind is damaging to individuals, but also damaging to the whole of society. I mean, which is kind of why we see the mess we're in.
Right. And at the very heart of it is the way we look at another human person. That's the basic thing.
Right.
Are you worthy of protection and fidelity and sacrificial love? Are you worthy of me making myself a total gift to you, no matter what it costs? Yes, you are. You are that worthy. And I don't want to give you any less if I truly love you. Now, you might not feel that way toward anybody.
Yeah.
But when you do, you can't give them. It's like it's your birthday. Here's an old magazine that I have under my bed. I'll wrap it up and put a bow on it, and we'll go have a glass of champagne, and you'll love it.
Right, it's not adequate.
I can't even say the
to
words.
what's deserved. Well, that's the definition of injustice in the Christian understanding: is not giving to others what is due to them.
And we are made in the image and likeness of God. Let me say that again. We are made in the image and likeness of God. We have great dignity, and we owe each other that due.
Stephen, thank you so much for the conversation. I have to take the break. We'll be right back with more on cohabitation with Rose Sweet on Catholic Answers Live.
This is Archbishop Paul Coakley of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Do you love praying for people? Have you ever wanted to use your gift of prayer to share Jesus with others and build up the body of Christ? Start a public prayer station with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Listen to people's needs, pray with them, or invite them to meet you at church. St. Paul Street Evangelization can help you get started. Find out how at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
The most original and exclusive Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
I'm continually amazed and humbled at the way God can work through me to help so many people. Although I have no idea what the callers' questions will be that day, I trust that the Holy Spirit can use my education and experience to guide, challenge, or comfort those who call.
Mast Appeal with Colleen Kelly Mast. Saturday morning, 9 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Second hour, Jimmy Akin will be here. We'll do some weird questions with Jimmy Akin, which is always fun. This hour, we're talking about something that maybe we should talk about a bit more. That is the defense of marriage from the perspective of cohabiting is not good for you. It's not what God wants for you. It's not what you deserve. It's not what you owe to the other person. Rose Sweet here to talk with us. You can find out all about Rose at rosesweet.com. And up next is Howard in Indianapolis, Indiana, listening on EWTN. We're glad you're here, Howard. Go ahead with your question for Rose.
Hi, Cy and Rose. I have a question that's very much related to all we're talking about.
Okay.
I'm counseling a man in his late 50s who is divorced and remarried as a Protestant. He's no longer calling himself a Catholic. Rose, I emailed you about this guy 2 years ago, and you told me to kick his butt.
Has he recovered from the butt kicking?
Well, I didn't know how hard or how gentle, so I took a gentle approach, and he backed away from me, even with the gentlest approach. I believe in gradualism sometimes.
Sure.
So the situation now is he totally understands what annulment is, and he should have had an annulment first, and he understands how he gets priests to talk to a bishop about co-validation, and he's dragging his feet, and my mentoring relationship is fading into a passing friendship, so I guess you're going to have to kick my butt.
No. Oh, Howard.
Okay.
Remember that Jesus was with his disciples for 3 years, and he gave them everything they needed. And when things got tough, they ran away, and one hung himself. So you are not a failure when somebody doesn't receive the truth from you. Okay? You're not a failure. This is a sad thing, and especially parents too. You give your children, you give your friends everything that they need to make the proper decision, and when they don't, we have to be like Christ, who looked at them with love and let them walk away. We can't lose our anxiety. We should lose our anxiety. We can't lose our peace and calm. So, Howard, I would give it one more try. And maybe you could say to him, look, I love you and I care about you, but I don't want to be on you all the time and push you away. I'm here for you always. But what you're doing is very harmful, and you are actually blocking God's grace to your eternal soul and to the woman you're with. And any attempt at sacraments is bringing condemnation on you. And these are true facts, and it breaks my heart for you. And I'm going to pray for you. So, but other than that, you can't force it down their throat, and you can't take responsibility for their choices. And I've said it on the show before. I remember these 4 things that Jesus did with everybody: listen, lead them to the truth, love them no matter what they do, and then let go of your anxiety and any over-responsibility.
Howard, and just because of the time, I'm going to leave that there, and I hope that was helpful to you. God bless you in attempting to help your friend, and you certainly have our prayers as you do that. I think I got, let me see where I'm going here. Hang on real quick. Nancy.
We got a lot of calls.
Yeah, that's what, and we don't have a lot of time left, so I want to get everybody on with you. Nancy in Wheeling, Illinois, watching on Facebook. We're so glad you're here, Nancy. Go ahead with your question for Rose Sweet.
Hi, Rose and Cy. Rose, my brother is getting married next month after cohabitating for about 4 years. They have a gift registry, but I'm not even looking at it because they're getting a crucifix, rosary, and a Bible from me. But I would love to give him and her a book or any resources to maybe truly understand their marriage. Thanks be to God, they are getting married in the Catholic Church, but they're not mass attending. They're not very catechized. So do you have any resources that I can maybe have him start his marriage off strong?
Nancy, Catholic Answers here has the best resources anywhere in the world, in my opinion. And there's just go poking around on the website. But let me give my personal spin on that. I was raised Catholic and didn't hate the Catholic Church, thought she was wrong. But what changed my heart was not a book. What changed my heart was hearing people's personal encounters with Jesus Christ, their personal encounters with God. And I began to realize that God was loving and tender and merciful and powerful, and he had lots of good things for me, and I had been running away. And it was in my discovery of who God is and who he wants to be to me, who he is to me, through personal testimonies and Jesus movies. Go figure. There are so many, because for me, I like kind of how you say guys are visual. I'm very visual too. And when I would see somebody portraying Jesus and how wise and kind and loving and how he went to the cross, it just makes me want to cry even thinking about it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've been running away from that. That's the kind of love I want. So I think before we hand people too many books, we have to pray for and think outside the box of what would move their heart toward Christ. Something that you think would open their mind and heart. I like The Chosen. I don't agree with all of the little theological things on The Chosen, but I like it, and there's so many things else out there. Nancy, I don't know. So other than your materials, they need conversion before they need technical.
That's a really good point. I mean, finding ways to invite people into a closer encounter with Christ, that's what's going to make their commitment to marriage become alive.
And I don't know if you carry his books, but I love Dr. Peter Kreeft's book called Jesus Shock. It's a little book, and it's all about Jesus.
I don't know either. You can check out Catholic.com, but that's not a hard one to find.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I mean, maybe you would want to read this one, Nancy, and just have these insights in you when you talk with your brother. Fulton Sheen's book, 3 to Get Married. A lot of people love that book, 3 to Get Married from Fulton Sheen. But I think Rose is right on the invitation to come closer to Christ is the primary thing. What do you think, Nancy?
100%, I agree. Absolutely, I will focus on that, and I will take a look at those resources and read it myself and go from there. But I appreciate that very much.
Nice talking with you, Nancy. Thanks. I'm going to keep going, Rose.
Okay.
Even though you're...
I know I wanted to say something, but never mind.
Oh, you want to say something?
No,
I apologize.
No. Let's take a call.
Charles in Houston, Texas, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM Satellite Radio. You are up next, Charles. Go ahead with your question for Rose.
Oh, hi. Hi, Cy. Hi, Rose.
Hi, Charles.
Hi, Charles.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday,
Hi,
yeah.
I'm happy Friday. I'm going to throw this out there, okay, for thought. Where in the discussion does it fit where people are married not through the church, but through a judge? You know, these people go to the judge or go to Las Vegas and get married, and it's not really a priest or a pastor. Where in the domain does that fall? Is that in the same ballpark as maybe?
Are these Catholic people? Is what you're talking about? Or
could be. Yeah, I know several Catholics that have just gotten married. I forgot, civilly in a civil marriage.
Gotcha.
Well, is that How do you think about that?
Well, it's never what I think, Charles. It's what the church teaches, because what I think is usually wrong, right? Right. Okay, so here's what the church teaches, that even two atheists who do go to Vegas and get married in front of an Elvis impersonator, if they intend a union as Christ loves his bride, which is free of fear, force, and pressure, a full and total self-giving of each other and permanently until death, and are open to the gift of children and will be exclusive and faithful to each other, they have a valid, natural marriage, that the church upholds that as a valid marriage bond. Now, they don't have a sacrament because only baptized people can get the extra graces of a sacrament. So this isn't the same as cohabitation, but I just thought, since you brought it up, let's revisit that. It is...
So for Catholic people, it's different because we are required to observe a certain form of marriage.
And when a Catholic doesn't, it's usually out of ignorance or stubbornness or pride or fear or a combination of those things. They don't want to jump through the Catholic hoops, and they think they know best, and they're just going to do what they're going to do. And like all of us who do that, like Eve when she plucked that apple, there's usually a big price to pay down the road. And you know what? Thank you. Let me be hope for all you people out there who have children who are, or friends who are living a sinful state in life. God did not give up on me, and God pursued me relentlessly. And when I finally opened up and surrendered to him, he was faithful to heal me and grow me up and bring me closer to him. So all of us have hope. All of you who are listening and have called in, who have friends or family members, don't despair. Don't despair. That's against our faith. We should always have hope, give it time, and give it to God.
Charles, thanks. As you heard, I'm trying to get as many on with Rose as I can before we have to end, so I hope that was helpful to you. Let's go to Gerson in Central Texas, also listening on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Gerson, go ahead with your question for Rose.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Very good.
Hi, Gerson.
My friends, I have a question. My question is, I would like to be free of this inhabitation thought that I have reoccurring through my head. I'm a practicing Catholic. I'm a convert, like the guy that got up on a tree because he wanted to see Jesus. Then he sees Jesus, and then conversion just sort of happens. And sort of like Rose, I met him through a personal encounter, because I noticed other people had other personal encounters, and so that's how I met him. Just a little background, and I come from an inhabitation sort of a culture, and but it's a little weird though, because inhabitation to me it's like a lead way drug sort of a thing, where it gets worse and worse. So where I come from, old guys, for example, go to the sweet 15 birthdays, and they offer love to these girls, quote unquote love, and in the face of inhabitation, and it's just prostitution, and then these girls are like they don't know what to do with themselves. I could give you examples of what's going on.
I only have a minute left, Kirsten, so what do you want Rose to answer for you?
I need help.
Okay, here. Let me just throw this out at you. You do not have to save the world because Jesus already did. I have to remind myself. I'm in a helping business. You obviously care about all these people. You see what's going on. Your heart breaks. You want to fix it. You can't possibly save and fix everybody. People are free to turn away from God, and that's the sad and scary part. But what you can do is focus on your own growth, your own love for God. Do the best you very can, and give it to God. Let him take care of it.
And Gerson, we'll have to leave it there because we have come right up to the end of the hour, and I very much appreciate that. I also very much appreciate the way you talk about being converted to Christ. I have to say I identify with that. It's a beautiful thing. Once you catch a glimpse of him, and then you're caught. You're like, this is the real deal. This is the truth. And it's such a beautiful truth to know that God has given himself in love to us. The kind of love that he wants us to give ourselves to one another in marriage. As a matter of fact, the marital image is one of the primary images of what it is that Christ has accomplished. He's the bridegroom who has come among us and invites us to
The eternal wedding
The feast. The eternal wedding feast. Rose Sweet, you're all right. I kind of like hanging out with you.
Thanks for having me, Si.
I knew that was going to be you.
Really?
When you said it was your friend. I knew it was going to be
Oh,
you.
come on, you didn't know.
All right, Jimmy Akin's coming up. We're going to do some weird questions with Jimmy Akin. That is always fun, and I guarantee the questions really are weird. We'll be right back with that right after this on Catholic Answers Live. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. This is kind of the week I like. I like to have a week like this, a week where you work with Jimmy Akin every single day. Pretty much. Yeah, not pretty much. Every single day I've worked with Jimmy Akin this week, and Jimmy's here this hour to take some weird questions. Jimmy, of course, senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, the proprietor of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, and probably the most willing of all Catholic apologists in the world to take weird questions. Hi, Jimmy Akin.
Hi, Cy Kellett. How you doing?
I am doing very, very well. I am very happy after that hour that we had to close the show yesterday.
Yeah, wasn't that great? That was awesome. In case people haven't heard, we made our drive goal of $225,000 for the drive, and in fact, we exceeded it. Thus far, we have around $250,000 that has come in, and there'll probably be a little bit more that comes in before we officially close out the drive.
That is pretty darn good. As a matter of fact, that is such an amazing last hour. Did you know this? I'll tell you this, and then I'll introduce someone in the studio here to you, Jimmy. That hour yesterday, where we started the hour thinking, well, we'll do the best we can.
Because we needed more than 60,000 in 1 hour, which is We've never done that before.
That was more than we have raised in 2 hours before. Was that right? Am I saying that right? It was the best hour we've ever done, and better than almost every, maybe not all, but almost every other 2 hour stretch we've ever done. So Chris Check, president of Catholic Answers, is here to talk. Is here to congratulate us. I think that's what the word is.
I just want to say thank you.
Well, say thank you to the folks.
Yeah.
You thought I was thanking you?
No, I know why you're here.
I am, of course.
Thank you to all the donors. It was only because of your generosity that we were able to make the goal. That was super awesome, and it was due to you guys.
That's 100%. That's Jimmy. Yeah. Jimmy took the words out of my mouth. My friends, this show proceeds because of your generosity. It does the good work that it does because you pay for it, and you make it possible for Jimmy, for Cy, for Trent, for Tim, Carlo, and the many Joe, all the good guests that we have on here. To spread the gospel with their special skills that they have to so many people. And you are going to meet on the other side of the veil people that you helped into the Catholic Church, that you helped into a deeper relationship with Jesus Christ because of your generosity. And I want to say, I know a lot of people, because I spoke to them on the phone, there are people who make real sacrificial gifts. Donna Barrick, our marketing director, spoke to a man yesterday living in his car. And and Donna said, look, we're grateful for this. We're going to pray for you. You should not feel like you need to support Catholic Answers Live. And he said, no, I want to. And then, of course, as Donna's telling me the story, he says, well, at that point, I can't get in the way because it's the widow's mite.
Yeah.
And so there are people who made serious sacrificial gifts, and this moves my heart. I'm so grateful. And Cy, I just want to say, I am very grateful to you because I know that, I hope I'm not speaking out of school here, but I know you're dealing with some of the lingering symptoms of you are. Of
COVID, yeah.
With your prolonged and with the headaches and everything, and you were here in the saddle for 3 days, full bore, with your full heart, and I'm so impressed.
Well, thank you for saying that.
And I'm super grateful to you.
It's that the feeling after that last hour yesterday in the building was. It's just one of those, it makes everything worth it, kind of. Like, everybody worked together. Everybody was on the phones. I mean, Jimmy was working just giving it his all, and Tim, the first hour, was giving it his all. And you just feel a sense of, wow, people really blessed us like crazy. It's a wonderful thing.
I wish that the people listening could come to Catholic Answers during Radio Drive and see the whole staff on the phones, Christine Venditti walking around with the snack trolley, and everybody talking on the Teams chat and encouraging one another. It's the Catholic Answers family really coming together. And my friends, you all who supported us, I am so grateful to you. I'm so grateful.
Well, thanks for coming in and saying that. It really was a special day yesterday, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. And we're on the air for the foreseeable future.
Right.
Bringing souls to Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Right.
Praise God.
Praise God for that.
All
Yeah,
right. Well,
praise
I'm going to
God.
turn it over to the experts. God bless you all.
Just one thing about Pledge Drive, this innovation that Christine came up with of healthy snacks. Terrible.
Oh, yeah, we'll stop that. We have to go back to the
Awful.
Kit Kats,
Awful
the
idea.
Snickers, the
That
Reese's
was-
peanut butter cups.
What
Yeah,
was that
exactly.
about?
I know. Yeah. No,
All right, I got to do some weird questions with Jimmy now.
Go for it, gentlemen.
See ya. I'm not going to give out the number, although I probably will give out the number because I am mistake prone myself. But weird questions is one of those fun times where we get to gather up some of the weirdest questions that Jimmy has received in his various kind of public availabilities, whether it's people know him from Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, or they know him from here, or from his dance calling, or wherever he's getting these. He gathers them up, and we have a great deal of fun answering weird questions. You ready to do that, Jimmy?
Yeah, sure. First, though, I thought I'd mention we have a new episode of Mysterious World out today, and it's part 1 of an interview I did with a Jewish scholar named Dr. Justin Sledge. And this week we talked about the secret origins of the form of Jewish mysticism known as the Kabbalah.
Oh, cool.
And so it's already been getting a lot of reaction. People have really been enjoying it. A lot of people have heard about Kabbalah, but they don't know where it came from or what it teaches. So this week we looked at where it came from and what its history is. Next week we're going to look at its secret teachings. So we have secret origins this week and secret teachings next week.
Very, very cool. You can find that and so many more fascinating mysteries over at Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Here's our first weird question from the day. This comes from Pamela. Could dark energy be associated with angelic demonic energy, dark matter that God created at the beginning of the universe? As in, the reason we have missing dark matter and or energy is due to the spiritual world or dimension we can't see but know is there.
Okay, so there are several things to think about here. The first one is whether or not angels and demons have matter. If the modern theory of matter, which is that it's made out of tiny particles called atoms, which are made out of even smaller particles, that's something that was proposed. Well, really, that's a modern understanding. The idea that matter is made out of tiny particles is something that was proposed by some early Greek philosophers known as Leucippus and Democritus, but it really didn't catch on at the time, and it really wasn't until 1905 that Albert Einstein actually proved atoms even exist. So it's the modern atomic theory of matter is quite recent, and they wouldn't have had it in the ancient world. And so when you look at very early sources like Second Temple literature from before the time of Christ, or some early Christian sources, it's not clear that angels aren't made of at least similar stuff than what we're made out of. So it's not clear at that point that they definitely are immaterial. We see, discussions of them, for example, mating with human women, which taken it at face value would suggest they're made out of something similar to what we're made out of. However, with the course of time, Christians came to discern that angels are radically different than us. And in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, if you look in paragraph 328, it says that they are non-corporeal, meaning they don't have a bodily form. And in paragraph 330, it says that they are purely spiritual. So that would mean they don't have matter the way we do. They don't have bodies like ours. They're created intellects. Having said that, could intellects be made out of dark matter? Well, dark matter is a substance that has been proposed by physicists to explain certain things we see in the universe. In particular, the edge of galaxies seem to be rotating in a way they shouldn't, if based on our ordinary understanding of how gravity works. And so it's been proposed that to explain these weird rotations of the galaxies, that there may be a hidden substance, hidden, which is why it's called dark. There may be a hidden form of matter or a dark form of matter that doesn't interact with light which is why we can't see it because light just goes right through it, but does interact gravitationally. So it would have mass that's capable of influencing the visible matter that we can see. And that's what's responsible for the motions of the rotation of galaxies and other things. Having said that, even though the majority position right now among astrophysicists is that dark matter exists, there is a counter argument, which is simply that we need to refine our theory of gravity, that maybe it doesn't work the same way on galactic scales that it works here in the solar system. Maybe we need to tweak it just a little bit, and you don't really need dark matter. So there's actually a big debate in cosmology right now about does dark matter exist, because we've had a real hard time finding it. Well, assuming that dark matter exists, could it be the same stuff that intellects are made out of? Well, that seems counterintuitive, so I wouldn't bet the farm on that. But if it turned out that intellects are made out of something that has mass but doesn't interact with light, then you could propose that angels and demons are dark matter, are made of dark matter, are related to dark matter, and the same thing would presumably be true of our intellects as well. But even though that's hypothetically possible, because we don't really know what spirits are made out of, I find it unlikely. So I don't think that that angels or demons are related to dark matter. They may be able to affect dark matter the same way they can affect normal matter, but I doubt very much that they are made of it.
Pamela, thank you for starting us off with a very good weird question. We got a whole bunch more weird questions. Jimmy Akin, our guest. More of that right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Miss a show? Make sure to catch up by downloading the podcast, available online at Catholic.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
EWTN, communicating the faith.
My wife is Catholic, my mother's Catholic, and I went to a weekend retreat to get married in the church. And I was just getting confused about what steps you need to take to be baptized, because I'm willing to do that. My wife does go to church regularly, and I need to.
Sure, yeah, I can help you. The easiest thing to do is to call the parish and tell them you'd like to become Catholic and you'd like to be baptized. They'll fix you up from there.
Welcome back, Catholic Answers Live. Weird questions with Jimmy Akin. What's the matter? Why are you doing? What are you saying in there, dear? You forgot what music?
The weird questions music.
Oh, Darren just realized. Oh, well, it's been a busy week, Darren. It's been a crazy week. So, Shane asks this: Is it? Can you find the music during the show, or is that it? Yeah, maybe we'll get some weird questions music then. Shane asks this: Is it possible to pray for the souls who have already gone to hell? And if so, would it do any good? I would love to hear what you have to say, even if you can't answer my question.
Well, I think I can answer your question. It's possible to pray for someone who is already in hell. And in fact, a lot of people probably are doing that because we don't know who has gone to hell. And people nevertheless pray for them anyway. So it's certainly possible. There's nothing stopping one from doing that, and it actually probably happens. The only way it wouldn't happen is if nobody went to hell, or if somehow the people who did go to hell were people that never got prayed for. So that leads us to the second question, which is if you are praying for someone in hell, would it do any good? Well, it depends on what you're praying. If you're praying, please let them out of hell, well, then that's not going to happen because hell is permanent. And so if someone is in hell, you can't pray that they get out of hell. Could you pray that they don't go to hell? Could you pray across time and ask God, please give them the graces they need in the last moment of their life to repent so that they won't go to hell? Well, I talk about issues like that in an episode of Mysterious World. It's episode 208 on time travel prayer, and you can listen to it by going to mysterious.fm/208 if you want to hear the whole thing. But one of the things I conclude is that while it is possible to pray concerning events in the past, like the moment of someone's death, you should not pray for things that you know to have been God's will to not happen. For example, you could pray for someone and say, please give them the grace that they need to go to heaven. But if they didn't accept that grace, then it's not going to affect their state. They're still going to be in hell. It was God. And if you knew that it was God's will to allow that person to go to hell, then you shouldn't pray that he not do that. It's just like you shouldn't pray. We know that in our universe, in our timeline, the 9/11 attacks happened. That was a terrible tragedy, but God allowed it to happen. And so you couldn't, or shouldn't, I should say, pray that God caused the 9/11 attacks not to happen in our timeline. What you could do is, and similarly, if you know someone died on 9/11, you shouldn't pray that person not have died, because it was God's will to allow that person to die. However, you could pray for other things. And in the case of someone in hell, even if you know they're in hell, you don't know how bad they're suffering. Now, how bad they're suffering is something that's determined by what they did during life. And so even if someone were in hell, and even if you knew that person was in hell, you could still pray, "Dear God, please help that person not commit extra sins in life so that they won't have to suffer as much when they are in hell." So I think it would be possible to pray for someone in hell and for it to have an effect. But the effect would not be getting them out of hell. The effect would be having them suffer less than they otherwise would suffer, because during life they didn't sin as badly as they otherwise would have sinned.
And I will leave it there. I hope that was helpful to you, Shane. Appreciate that question. It's Weird Questions with Jimmy Akin this hour. Next comes from Alba. And Alba asks, did toddler Jesus have meltdowns and temper tantrums? And can we guess if Mary ever lost her patience on him and yelled at him?
Well, we obviously don't have any record of this in the New Testament. We have mention of Jesus's birth. We have when he's between 1 and 2 years old. We have the story of the visit of the Magi, and then we flash forward to when he's 12 years old and is found at the temple. So the New Testament doesn't give us any information about this. It's speculative as a result. We do have some additional early Christian literature, though, like the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, which was a document that was written in the mid-2nd century, so maybe around the year AD 150. And in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, Jesus does kind of throw tantrums. There's one point, for example, at which another child has jostled him or something, and he strikes that child dead. So that's kind of a little tantrumy. And then Joseph, the parents of the child that Jesus struck dead, complain to Joseph, and they say, "Can you please talk to your son about this, because he's killing people?" And Joseph goes and talks to Jesus, and Joseph loses his temper and grabs Jesus by the ear and squeezes him by the ear. So we don't have Mary doing that, but we do have Joseph doing that. Now, the thing is, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas is a work of early Christian fiction. It's not even clear how seriously people took it at the time, but it certainly does not have value as a historical document in telling us what really happened. So even though we do have some stories of a tantrum throwing Jesus and parents getting exasperated at him, in later literature, that's really not historically reliable. So what could we speculate just based on what we have in the New Testament? Well, one of the things that we see in the New Testament is that, when he was 12, Jesus did get left behind at the temple. And when Mary and Joseph found him, Mary is somewhat exasperated with him, because she said, don't you know what your father and I have been searching for you for 3 days? So it is possible for Mary, in a non-sinful way, to experience frustration or exasperation or anxiety concerning Jesus. So I wouldn't say that she could lose her patience with him. I wouldn't say that's intrinsically impossible. Whatever she would do, it would not be sinful, but she could, in a sinless way, experience frustration or consternation or exasperation with him. Would Jesus himself, though, have thrown tantrums? Well, one of the things that Luke stresses is that after the finding in the temple, he went back to Nazareth with Mary and Joseph and was obedient to them. So that reveals to us that Jesus was an obedient child. But is obedience inconsistent with anger? Well, no, it's not, because Jesus himself was fully obedient to his heavenly Father, and yet he got angry, like when he cleared the temple of the money changers. So if you're, let's say, a toddler, let's say you're 2 years old or 1 year old, and you don't have language yet, and you don't have the ability to speak yet, and you're hungry, or you're tired, or you're in pain, and Jesus could experience hunger and tiredness and pain, you might get frustrated and cry and express that the way children are programmed to biologically. Children are programmed when they're in distress to yell, and that's the purpose of that, is to attract their parents' attention so that the parents can attend to whatever the cause of the child's distress is. So Jesus could cry, and if you want to call yell out, and if you want to call that throwing a tantrum, well, you could say that. But what he would not have done is throw a tantrum in a sinful, selfish way. But he could have been in physical or emotional distress and yelled out to alert Mary and Joseph to that fact.
Thank you so much for that question, Alba, for that series of questions. I appreciate that very, very much. It's Weird Questions with Jimmy Akin. Here's a weird one from Randy. As a matter of fact, I know it's a weird one because he starts this way. Here's a weird question for Jimmy Akin. I trust him to have both seen the problem and found what is probably a simple solution to it. Question: how is original sin, inherited from Adam and Eve, different from the biologically discredited idea of inheritance of acquired characteristics, Lamarckian evolution? In other words, it seems analogous to the story of how the bear lost his tail, easily Googled. In the spirit of transparency, I'm a professor of biological anthropology, but also a Christian. I know the scientific and religious truth in this matter can be reconciled, but I don't know enough to be able to do it by myself.
Okay, so we'll need to continue this on the other side of the break, but first we should give some background on some of the concepts that he just mentioned so that other people will be familiar with them. The story of how the bear lost his tail is a legend among the Ojibwe Native Americans, and basically what happens in the story is an otter has a whole bunch of fish, and the bear says, well, how did you get all these fish? And the otter lies to the bear and says, well, I've got this, we got this frozen river here, and I stick my long otter tail down through a hole in the ice and use that to catch the fish. And the bear says, do you mind if I try? And the otter says, no, I got plenty of fish. Use my hole in the ice all you want. So the bear sticks his long tail down into the ice, and no fish ever bite on it. It's not he swishes his tail around. None of the fish ever bite. It's not an effective thing. And when the bear goes to leave after being disappointed, he discovers his tail has been frozen into the ice. And as he gets up, his tail comes off. And that is why bears today have short tails instead of long tails. This is very much like the Just So stories of Rudyard Kipling, like the elephant got his trunk because a baby elephant was like sniffing an alligator in a river, and the alligator bit it, or a crocodile bit it and stretched it out, and so that's why elevators have long trunks. It's also like some of the Brer Rabbit stories by Joel Chandler Harris. And it's an idea that was explored, at least to some extent, by a naturalist who lived in the 1700s named Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. And it was in an early theory of evolution called Lamarckian evolution, which I'll tell you about on the other side of the break.
It's Weird Questions with Jimmy Akin. We'll try to resolve this mystery and many more when we come back right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Do you have a clean joke to share with the world?
Be with us Monday on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
On most of these EWTN stations.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
There's a little weird music, because it's Weird Questions with Jimmy Akin. Wish there was a little theremin in that. Oh, there is a little theremin in there. Weird Questions with Jimmy Akin. We've already gathered them up, so we don't give out the phone number during this the opportunity, because people get the weird questions to Jimmy. They find ways to get the weird questions to Jimmy. And this one comes from
people can always email them to radio@catholic.com, and they get forwarded to me, and I log them.
Yeah. And please do. We love getting these weird questions. This is a professor of biological anthropology that asked the question of basically how can we kind of make the theory of the loss of sanctifying grace from Adam and Eve comport with the modern theories of evolution. But Jimmy, you were in the midst of your answer.
Yeah. So in the 1700s and 1800s, there was a naturalist named Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, and he theorized about evolution. So the idea of evolution, of biological evolution, it did not originate with Darwin. In the 1800s. It has a much longer history than that. And Lamarck proposed what was for a time a very popular theory, which today is called Lamarckianism or Lamarckian evolution. And Lamarck's idea was that if an organism uses a characteristic, that characteristic will get passed on to its offspring. whereas if it doesn't use that characteristic, it will weaken and eventually not get passed on. Now, there's an element of truth to that, but not quite the way Lamarck thought. For Lamarck, the way you got giraffes with the really long necks was there was originally some kind of proto-giraffe that had a shorter neck, and it would stretch. It would lean up to try to get higher up leaves off of trees to eat them. And the fact it would stretch its neck caused its neck to get longer, and then because it had developed itself a longer neck, it passed that on to its offspring. And so the human analogy would be like if a man decides to become a blacksmith and he develops big muscles in his arms because he does blacksmithing, well, then his children would have stronger arm muscles. Okay, so that idea was widely discredited. Darwin pointed out that it doesn't quite work this way. Instead, there are random mutations. So you did originally have proto-giraffes with short necks, and then some of them randomly mutated to have slightly longer necks. And because they had slightly longer necks, they could get more food, and therefore they were more likely to survive and reproduce. So it wasn't the fact they were using their necks to get at the leaves that caused their children. It was the random mutation that caused them to have longer necks, and it was the random mutation that was passed down to their children. So analogizing that to, I guess I should also say, there has been, even though original Lamarckianism has been refuted, it's experiencing something of a comeback these days in evolutionary circles because of what's known as epigenetics. Epigenetics deals with the way our genes are activated. So in different cells of our bodies, different genes are switched on, so to speak. And that's why even though every cell in your body has the same genetic code, some cells manifest as kidney cells, and other cells manifest as skin cells, and other cells manifest as muscle cells. What determines the cell type is not the genes, because they all have the same genes. It's which genes are activated.
Okay.
And what activates them are these things that kind of go on top of the genes, and that's why it's called epigenetics. It means upon the genes. And it turns out that something like Lamarckian evolution happens with epigenetics. There was, for example, a study that came out in 2013 about mice. And what the scientists did was they would expose male mice to the scent of cherry blossoms. They had a chemical that's in cherry blossoms that gives them their distinctive smell, and they would expose the mice to the scent of the cherry blossom and shock them, electrically. So very quickly, this is like a Pavlov's dog nightmare.
Yeah.
You have the pleasant aroma of cherry blossoms, but every time you smell it, you get a shock. And so the mice quickly learned to fear the smell of cherry blossoms. And they also developed more sensors in their noses to detect the cherry blossom scent, so they would know when the shock is coming. Well, that turned on certain genes in the male mice. And the epigenetic markers that turned on those genes got passed on to the mice's offspring.
Oh, how interesting.
And so even though these new baby mice pups had never met their fathers and had never smelled cherry blossom before, as soon as the scientists exposed the mice pups to cherry blossom smell, they got agitated and freaked out. And they also found that these pups had more of the olfactory cherry blossom detector cells as well. So the epigenetics had passed down from the adult male mice to their offspring. And it was a situation where you have one generation learns to do something and the next generation inherits that. So there's been a kind of revival of some Lamarckian ideas in epigenetics. Now, let's apply all that to original sin. The essence of original sin, as you mentioned, spoiler warning, is that it's a deprivation of sanctifying grace. And sanctifying grace is not itself material. So original sin itself is a non-biological phenomenon. It doesn't affect us genetically. It's not part of who we are on a molecular level. But the stain of original sin, which is the consequences of original sin, includes things like disordered desires. And we know that people can have disordered desires because of their genes, or because, like some people inherit a predisposition to alcoholism or something. And the same thing could be true epigenetically. If people are subjected to certain stresses, their descendants may have certain problems. And so even though original sin itself is non-biological, the stain of original sin or disordered desires has a biological component. So how could we explain that if you have Adam and Eve in an unfallen state where they're not experiencing disordered desires, and then their descendants do? Well, one way of explaining it is to say, okay, these disordered desires resulted from the ordinary process of evolution, which isn't perfect. And then when God gave Adam and Eve their souls, he also gave them that original grace, which neutralized their disordered desires. And so it wasn't functioning in their pre-fall state. But then when they fell and lost the sanctifying grace, the stain reasserted itself. And because it was in there on the genetic level, it also got passed on to their offspring. So there wouldn't have been a genetic or an epigenetic change. It's just that the effects of original grace would have suppressed the stain of original sin until that grace was lost. A second option that occurs to me is, genetic damage can occur to people in a single generation and be passed on to their offspring.
Oh, yeah.
If you get exposed to radiation and it affects your reproductive organs, it can affect your offspring. So it's possible that when original sin happened and Adam and Eve lost that grace, it could have caused biological damage to them on a genetic level or on an epigenetic level. And thus, even though you don't normally see significant massive mutations in a single generation, you could have seen it here because of the nature of of what happened. It could have done genetic damage that was passed on, or it could have done epigenetic damage and turned on the wrong stuff that then got passed on.
What a fascinating question. I hope that was satisfying to you as a what did he say? Biological anthropologist. And I'd be interested if you've got a follow-up question, Randy, because that was kind of a fun little journey. The next question, Jimmy, I want to give you time to answer. So we're a little early for the break, but I'm going to take the break and we'll come back and we'll have plenty of time for the next weird question for Jimmy Akin.
There's only one. Catholic Answers Live.
We have a big problem. Our culture is dying and souls are in danger of being lost. The answer is conversion to Jesus Christ in His church. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a Catholic organization, and we have hundreds of teams spreading the good news throughout the country. But we need your help. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
The most original Catholic content is on EWTN Radio.
What have you always wanted to know about the Vatican? Well, I'm your Vatican insider, and I answer that question when I bring you the news about the Pope, Vatican City, and I share insights and stories from a broad spectrum of church ministries.
Vatican Insider with Joan Lewis. Saturday night, 9 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
I don't like to interrupt a good theremin. you know? I don't like to talk over a good piece of theremin music. That's the weird questions music, so it's Weird Questions with Jimmy Akin. And when you hear that music, you know you're about to hear a weird question, and this one comes from Parent Prime Mover on Twitter. I don't know, Primover? Is that Prime? I don't know how you're supposed to say it.
It's spelled ambiguously. It could be Primover or Prime Mover.
Is string theory or implications drawn from string theory incompatible with theism and Christianity?
Well, string theory is a theory about the fundamental nature of matter. So we know that matter is made out of atoms, and atoms are made of smaller particles like electrons, protons, and neutrons. And protons and neutrons are made of smaller particles known as quarks. The idea is that they're fundamentally, though, if you get down to the bottom level, matter is going to be made out of something called strings. And so this is simply a theory to explain the observed motions of matter and how it interacts with itself and so forth. String theory is thus compatible with a wide range of religious and philosophical positions. There's nothing about, matter is made out of strings. Well, that doesn't contradict anything in the Christian faith. So in principle, string theory is consistent with Christianity and with theism. But then you have, now I should point out, string theory was really dominant for a while in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. It's starting to fall out of favor now because we really don't have good evidence for it. And things like the Large Hadron Collider have not turned up the evidence for string theory that were predicted. For example, it was predicted that every normal particle has a counterpart particle called a sparticle. So you and it was predicted as soon as we turn on the Large Hadron Collider, we're going to see sparticles, and so and we didn't. So that prediction failed. And many, many other predictions made on the basis of string theory are not testable, because in order to test them, you would need, a particle accelerator the size of a galaxy. And others are just ideas that don't even make testable predictions. And so string theory has started to decrease in popularity, but it is in principle compatible with theism and with Christianity. On the other hand, that doesn't mean that everything everybody says about string theory is going to be compatible. But then that's true of atomic theory in general. You have some people who say, oh yeah, matter is made of atoms, and atoms is all there is. There's no God, there's no spirits, it's all atoms or smaller particles. Well, okay, that's not compatible with Christianity or with theism. And in the same way, some people will look at string theory and say, oh, here's an understanding of it that doesn't make room for God. Well, Stephen Hawking did that in one of his books shortly before his death. Well, okay, then that understanding is not compatible with theism or with Christianity, just like a matter-only understanding of atomic theory is not compatible. But it's not the problem. The atomic theory is not the problem, and the string theory is not the problem. It's the way it's being used or how it's being interpreted.
Parent Prime Mover, thanks very much for a good string theory question. Another weird question comes from Joe, and Joe asks this. In terms of the theory of infinite possible futures, are there an infinite number of past timelines, or do all possibilities combine into a single past timeline?
Okay, so God knows the history of every possible world, everything that could happen. And if you imagine the current moment in time as like a slice of time, you could map the position of every particle in the universe within that slice of time right now. Okay, so imagine we've got a map of every particle in the universe right now. Well, God not only can, but does imagine every way those particles could evolve in the future, all of their future interactions, all the ways it could go. Similarly, God can and does imagine everything that could have led up to the current state. And there's not just one way to lead up to the current state. There are multiple things that could have happened that could have resulted in every particle being exactly where it is right now. Maybe a particle took one trajectory to get where it is right now, or maybe it took some other trajectory to get where it is right now. The only thing that's determined is that's where it is right now. And so there are an infinite number of conceivable futures in terms of where particles could go, and there are an infinite number of conceivable pasts where particles could have come from. And God knows all of them. So God knows all of these possible pasts and possible futures. Are any of them real? Well, we don't know. But what I can tell you is that some in the physics community take the idea of an infinite number of pasts seriously. This is a theory that was proposed by a 20th century physicist named Richard Feynman, and he noticed that you could do certain aspects of physics really well if you imagined a particle moving between point A and point B, taking every possible path between those 2 points. And if you calculate all of the different paths it could take and do a summary of them, it will model what we actually see really well. And so some people have said, maybe particles do that. Maybe they really do take every possible path between point A and point B. And this is known as the sum over histories or path integral formulation of quantum mechanics. It's a matter of interpretation. It's not something that's been proved, but it has been something that physicists following Richard Feynman have at least entertained. Because if you do the math this way, it's a very good model of what we actually see. And so there is speculation that there are an infinite number of histories leading up to every moment in time.
Freaky. Thanks for that weird question. I'm going to try to get some more weird. As a matter of fact, I'm anxious to get to the next one because this one I'm very, very interested in. Let me see. Am I in the right spot? Yep. Brian asks this. Could you speak a bit about Adam and Eve and the other hominids, many of which seem to have used tools, bury their dead, and made cave art?
Okay, so I assume what Brian is asking about is what would Adam and Eve's relationship have been to these other humans? Like, would other hominids, would they have been rational human beings that would have been, descendants of Adam and Eve, or what? Well, so we do know that there were a variety of different hominids in up until several thousand years ago. And some of them did use tools, they buried their dead, and they made cave art. And they weren't Homo sapiens sapiens, which is what we are. They were like Homo neanderthalensis, or they were Denisovians. There's a new one that's been found in China called Dragon Man. But they weren't us. And so they weren't our exact subspecies. So what can we make from the different things they left behind? Well, tool use, to my mind, is not itself particularly significant, because there are other creatures that are clearly non-human that use tools. Dolphins will sometimes use sponges as a kind of nose guard when they're doing certain things, and they have to modify a sponge in order to use it as a nose guard. So a tool is essentially an object you modify and then use for some purpose. Similarly, apes, certain apes in Africa do what you might call termite fishing, where they've got a termite mound and they want to get the termites out of it. And so what they do is they take a stick and they modify the stick so it's, they rip off all the little sub branches so it'll fit down a hole in the termite mound. And they stick it down in the termite mound, and when the termites stick to it, they pull it up and they eat the termites. And so they go termite fishing. Well, okay, so tools Also, some birds use tools. So tool use itself isn't particularly significant to me. Cave art is a little more interesting because it suggests symbolic patterns of thought. You know, if you're painting a picture of a horse, it's like, okay, that's a symbol of a horse. So so that, you know, is more significant, but it doesn't show me that they had the same kind of souls that we do. What I think does is burying the dead. Now, burying the dead itself doesn't mean they have the concept of an afterlife, because the dead start to smell and they pose a biological hazard. And so, you know, cats bury their waste, and they don't have any special significance to their waste. It just smells bad and they're bred to bury it. So humans, early humans, could have said, okay, this person is not moving anymore and they smell bad, so we're going to put them under the earth so that we don't have that problem. So what I think does reveal belief in an afterlife is grave goods. All over the world we find, and this is true primarily of Homo sapiens sapiens graves, but it's also true of like Neanderthal graves, where we seem to find goods that someone used in life that have been buried with the person. And that could be because they believed the person would somehow use the item in the afterlife, or because they thought it would be comforting to the person to be buried with that, or something. But if you find grave goods, that suggests you've got the concept of the afterlife. And so I think some of these hominids did have the concept of the afterlife. And if you have the concept of the afterlife, then I think you've got an afterlife. The question would then be, are these other hominids part of mankind in the biblical sense? Now, obviously, the biblical author didn't know about them. You know, their bones had not been found. And so they were unknown to the biblical author. But thinking theologically, whether they would count as modern humans is going to depend on whether you need a rational soul of the modern human type to have an afterlife. There have been various philosophers like St. Thomas Aquinas who argued that in order to have an afterlife, you need a rational soul. And if you don't have a rational soul, you won't survive death. I've gone over those arguments, and I don't find them. I should say, if Aquinas is right about that, and these other hominids had the concept of the afterlife, then that would tell us that they have rational souls. And thus they would be humans in the biblical sense, and thus descendants of Adam and Eve. So you'd have to push Adam and Eve way back in history in order to account for these guys. On the other hand, I've been over those arguments and I don't find them persuasive. In fact, I did an episode of Mysterious World. It's episode 203. So you can go to mysterious.fm/203 to listen to it. But I did a whole episode on those arguments and some surprising evidence that animals actually may have an afterlife. And so if that's the case, if you don't need a modern rational soul in order to survive death, then we wouldn't have to say that Denisovans and Neanderthals and Dragon Man were descendants of Adam and Eve. They could have just been other people who would have survived death and are not man in the biblical sense. So there are different options there.
What a wonderful question, Brian. Thank you so much. I got to say, Dragon Man won the naming contest. If you're going to be a Neanderthal or Denisovian or a Dragon Man, I'm going to go with Dragon Man.
He certainly leveled up, yeah.
He leveled up. Jimmy, thanks for a great week. Thanks for being with us every single day this week and doing all these weird questions for us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Don't forget, Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World drops every Friday morning. There's a new one right now, the part 1 of 2 episodes on the Kabbalah. That's the way you say it, right? Kabbalah?
Kabbalah, yep.
On the Kabbalah.
And its secret history.
So learn your secrets of the Kabbalah. That wraps it up. What a wonderful week. Very, very grateful for your support. I just want to say thanks once again. We did meet and exceed the goals we had in a quite wonderful way, and we're very grateful. Thank you. We'll see you next time, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.